Hey, everybody. Welcome. I am so glad to be here with you. I'm glad that you're here with me on this gorgeous sunny Wednesday before a wellness day. So we can dive in to the continuation of where we were on Monday and where we are now here in part 2 of the course. I have just one announcement before we get started today. There is a Sustainability Alumni Interest Group. For those of you who are seniors and are interested in this, you might want to take a quick screenshot. But there's an info session and meeting on Wednesday, March 24th in the evening. So if that's something that you're curious about, please explore that. So that's my announcement for today. I just found this to be absolutely beautiful, stunningly beautiful. If you've logged into my Zoom at all, you know that my passcode is Prism, which happens to be my outdoor school name. For the years that I worked at outdoor school with Shavers Creek, my nature name is Prism because I am so captivated by color. And so this really caught my attention. And then I began to read more about it. Upcycling Toxic Runoff, that caught my attention. Upcycling Toxic Runoff in the Ohio River region. Artist and professor John Sabra produces his own pigments for his art. So he's taking what's gross, that toxic runoff, and creating these beautiful colors. Yellows and reds are from the oxidized sludge of abandoned coal mines, heavy metals from the water. Rather than ordering the iron oxide pigments from another country, he's using them from his own area. He's using his awareness to create awareness. We are all connected. We are all connected. And to use our creativity in these ways of keeping and making more connections, it's pretty beautiful. So I'd like you to take a deep breath, come into full presence in the space where you are, in this material where we are, and being in your own being. You too have the opportunity coming up next week. Some of you have likely looked ahead and have seen that in week 9 for your reflection action assignment, there is the action component. The action component is you have 3 options there. You can make something. And so if there's something that you're curious about making, if you've always thought, crocheting a hat would be cool, I wish I knew how to do that. Or if there's something that you want to upcycle with some broken electronics, that's going to be an option too, is upcycling. So the idea is that these are 2 websites that might help you get started in the making or the upcycling of something. There are so many do-it-yourself options. And so I would encourage you to explore what it is that you might want to make. You might want to consult with friends and family members who are makers. You might have people in your family that know how to do things that you're curious about too. So you might want to make something. You might repair something. Or you might upcycle something. So the idea of upcycling is taking something that is not useful anymore. So maybe this pair of jeans had a big hole in them. I know that holes in jeans are cool, but maybe it was an inappropriate hole. And it's been transformed in this cool little pocket, this pouch to carry this purse that's now useful for something else. So I encourage you to be bold and be creative and to play with this assignment. Really play. be in a place where you are enjoying exploring something new. So you're going to do it, or at least start doing it. You're going to write about it over the course of next week. And then in week 11, make sure that you hold on to what you make or repair or upcycle, because at the week 11 lab, you're going to present what you did, share your ideas with other people. It's so interesting today that so many of us go through school and go through young adulthood, and we don't have some of these basic skills. So I encourage you to explore and to play. So now I want to think back to the last few classes that we've had. Think about the peril of the birds, the situation of the ocean and its creatures, the chaos of climate change. And today's class is about chemicals, and how our planet, Earth, ours, we call it ours, Earth is in crisis. Why do we as humans keep persisting in the destruction of our biosphere when all indications are that we can't keep doing it the way that we're doing it? So I want to hold this idea in your minds, is that that we are in crisis. Earth is in crisis. That crisis means danger and opportunity, and that leads us to choices, leads us to using our creativity, and all of it takes courage. So with this in mind, we're going to dive in today to chemicals. I'd like you to start by brainstorming. You might want to jot down on your notes page some ideas before you start talking in your Zoom, about where are chemicals? Where are chemicals in your life? So we're going to take about three minutes to do this. So now that you have a list brainstormed, we are going to cover some of these that you have discussed in your labs. We'll dive into a few of them. And we're going to start here. Cars. I mentioned this on Monday also, that this is the number one thing that they're working on changing are the standards for cars around climate change. But this is another reason, is that not only are they giving off the carbon dioxide, as you can see on this list, and the carbon monoxide, but these are toxic. As all of you know, if you breathe in car exhaust for even a couple of minutes, you're dead. The toxins are so intense. Benzene is so highly toxic. And so thinking about the clustering of leukemia near roads. So many of you are thon people that make thon happen. Childhood cancers, a big one is leukemia, and it's caused by the toxin, in some cases, caused by the toxins near roads. Where else? Where else are there chemicals? Here. Chemicals that are in our food because of this. Ooh, this is interesting. I'm just attending to what's coming in the chat. The student said baby carrots didn't make him feel good. So he looked it up and found out that they get their shape by being hit against metal and coated in chemicals. And then somebody else said that chemicals are being used everywhere because of COVID. It's very true that we're using more and more things that kill things. And so, yes, that's important to note. So let's talk through some of these things. Yes. So they're spraying this so that it could be the insecticides. It could be also herbicides, plants that are or trying to kill the plants that are growing in between the corn. And an example that you might be hearing about right now in the news is glyphosate. Glyphosate is a chemical that disrupts a protein pathway that only plants possess. And so they've determined that it's safe for people and other animals because we don't have that protein pathway. We don't have that enzyme that plants do, and so it's considered safe, except that there's a pretty big debate going on about what does safe really mean. I put an article in Module 8 for you to look at that I felt like did a good job of diving into the issues of how safe is determined. The idea that there is animal testing being done, but which animals, when I think of animal testing, I think of mice in labs, but what about honeybees? Turns out that glyphosate, it's bad for hummingbirds. No, say it again. For bees, honeybees. And so the way that they're testing, and what about the fish, then the snails that are involved when the chemicals run off into the water. And so there are all kinds of debates about what is right, how to use this. And so somebody said this in that article, people must be aware that if they want to eliminate glyphosate, there are two options. Either they're going to create a new herbicide that we don't know as much about. Glyphosate's been on the market for 40 years. Or they're going to go to growing things more organic. And that's a big debate because people don't know if growing things organically is going to produce as much food. That's from this article. From other articles and things that I've read and watched, there is a lot of future for the organic farming, and we're going to get into that later in class. So there are chemicals being sprayed on our food or that are in our food as it's grown. There are also, this is glyphosate. Roundup is glyphosate. There's also chemicals in our food, chemicals that are added as their food additives to maintain or improve safety, freshness, taste, texture, or appearance. And so sometimes this is a long list, sometimes things that are difficult to pronounce that are definitely artificial colors or flavors. The human body has never before been subjected to these. So you see the real maple syrup in the front, which is just maple sap. It comes straight from the maple tree. It's boiled down, and that's all that's in that bottle is organic. It's maple, pure maple product. The ones in the background include things like sodium metahexaphosphate, sodium benzoate, potassium sorbate. And so those are all in there to preserve freshness or to enhance flavor or to give it flavor because those are sugar products. So we're told that sometimes things have side effects, but there's not really, you don't have to say the side part. They're just effects. They're causing things to happen. And so they aren't really side effects. That sort of lessens the pressure. And they're direct effects. And it's not just in food either. What happens if we say no to bottled water? Saying no to bottled water means that you're going to save money. It's less expensive, thousands of times cheaper to get water out of your tap than it is to buy bottled water, depending on which brand you buy. Sometimes bottled water costs more than gasoline if we are buying the upper echelon of the bottled water. The plastic that is put in here, the toxins that are in the plastic or what the chemicals that are producing the plastic may leach into the water, depending how long the water is sitting in that bottle, depending on the conditions that the bottle has been subjected to. So I know that when I've gotten in my car and there's an old bottle of water in there, the boys, I know Henry has said to me, "Mom, this tastes bad. This tastes like plastic." And it's true that the chemicals from the plastic can leach out. And in a lot of cases, and in fact, almost all cases, it's not purer than tap water. That depends where you live. And there are outside circumstances that might affect your tap water. But there are more standards that regulate United States tap water than there are standards that regulate bottled water. I know that the labels are attractive with waterfalls and art and fresh flowing streams, but it's not as great as it may look. And it has all the other effects as well with the plastic. So I took the boys for spring break to Fort Lauderdale, and we were in a hotel, and the man behind the counter said, "How many bottles of water would you like?" I think he was ready to give us enough for our stay. There were 4 of us. And I said, "Well, the tap water is safe to drink, right?" And he said, "Oh, you're not from here." And I thought, oh goodness, it's just become so part of our culture in a lot of places that the obvious is lost. What are those things? These are the things we put in our bodies. What about the things that we put onto our bodies? The products that go from the shelves to our at-home medicine cabinets and then onto our skin. Shampoo and toothpaste and soap, deodorant, hair conditioner, lip balm, sunscreen, body lotion, shaving products, cosmetics, hair products, makeups, concealers, aftershaves, perfumes, colognes, creams, etc. On average, women use 12 products that have about 12 ingredients each, so 144 potentially different chemicals, different additives, different ingredients. And on average, men use 6 products with 12 ingredients each. What is that? What is that stuff that we're putting on our skin, and what's happening? Our skin is our largest organ on our body, 16 square feet, and so highly absorbing. The cells comprising the outermost layer of the skin are almost exclusively supplied by external oxygen. That's how we're absorbing oxygen through our skin to sustain it. Medicine can be administered through the skin by ointments or by means of an adhesive patch, such as the nicotine patch. And we have to consider that anything that we put on our skin is absorbed in a matter of 28 seconds. 28 seconds. So how safe? I encourage you to explore this website. It has so much information about all kinds of different products that we use on and around our bodies every day in our homes. Personal care products are manufactured with about 10,500 different chemical ingredients, some of which are known or expected carcinogens. That means that they are cancer causing. They're toxic to the reproductive system or known to disrupt the endocrine system. Those are important systems that make our bodies function the way that they need to. Some companies make products that are so safe that we could eat them, and yet others choose to use dangerous ingredients like coal tar and formaldehyde, which are both human carcinogens, lead acetate, which is a developmental toxin. It's interesting that no pre-market safety testing is involved or necessary for industrial chemicals that go into personal care products. Less than 20% of these 10,500 chemicals have been assessed for health effects in our body. So the stakes are high when we're using these products. They're not just trace contaminants in the products, they're substantial components of the products, just like flour is a primary ingredient in bread. And so it begs the question then, why? Why do I choose to use these products, or how do I choose the products that I do use? I'd like you to just take this in. We've been conditioned to believe that we need that stuff in a lot of cases. 99% of these products didn't exist in the time of your grandparents or your great-grandparents. So thinking about this part this lesson from the course, I'd like to tell you the story of Caitlin. She found this to be pretty moving. She was thinking about makeup, and she wrote this in her by-side journal. She says, "As a woman in America, I was taught that makeup is supposed to be a symbol of feminism and beauty, and I began applying it as soon as my parents allowed. I welcomed it as part of my womanhood. However, in recent months, I have begun to see the ridiculousness of it, as it is used to create a kind of alternate identity. For years, I have used it to make my face look better, while what I was really doing was hiding or creating a mask to hide behind. My makeup allowed me to live a lie. So finally, I decided to do something heroic, namely to remove makeup from my routine. This has meant convincing myself not to go to the makeup bag if I feel like my face is particularly unimpressive or unattractive on a certain day. So now in the morning, I stand in front of the mirror and I look myself in the eyes to take in what is actually my face. I tell myself that this face holds heritage, history, genetics, and individuality. If I, along with others, cannot accept it for face value, then I am failing to appreciate the woman that I am. Walking around all day without any makeup has been an enlightening experience. If I need to rub my eyes or if it starts to rain all of a sudden, I need not worry about sponging my makeup. And I can comfort myself in knowing that my current appearance is all me with no help. I've been forcing myself to maintain solid, confident eye contact with others so that they too can take in an unenhanced face. And most of the time they accept it. It turns out my face does not need black lines and red accents. That was all a culturally imposed theory. Yes, my face no longer belongs to the corporations selling artificial enhancers. I'm reclaiming it and returning it back to its home, the earth. It turns out that nature, the nature that is me, needs no help from Maybelline to be complete." This is Caitlin. And she made more changes so that she could use less product and to distinguish that her identity is not based on her looks. Caitlin's story is that she questioned, she reflected, she felt, and she made a choice. So, how does this sit with you? I'd like you to take 2 minutes in your Zoom right now and think about how this sits for you. How does this make you feel? And maybe COVID has changed your routine. And if so, how is that? So have a conversation about that. So I'm going to tell you another story. A woman named Sandra Steingraber. She spent most of her childhood in Illinois, an area of Illinois that's dominated by industrial agriculture and manufacturing. And she was diagnosed with bladder cancer at the age of 20. She expected that there was a cancer cluster in her hometown and maybe even in her family. And so once she was in remission, she began her lifelong exploration of environmental links to cancer and human health. She is still doing diligent work at Ithaca College, where she is working now in the field of climate change. So she decided to study cancer geographical patterns and connect to environmental pollutants. So the idea of environmental cancers and cancer mapping in industrial areas, and this is what she found. So bladder cancer cases in states that were using higher levels of agricultural, particularly arsenic-based pesticides, that the rates were incredibly high. And so she was here from this area of Illinois where there is this high incidence of bladder cancer based on the environmental toxins. She went on to continue her research. This is her Ecologist's Journey to Motherhood. Her next book, Having Faith, explores the intimate ecology of motherhood. It's a memoir of her own pregnancy as well as the investigation of what's happening for the fetus that's growing inside, fetal toxicology, the idea that before birth, babies are being subjected to environmental hazards that happen at all levels, all times during infant development. So what does this mean then once the baby is born? Is that there are chemicals that are found in breast milk. Depending where the mother lives, this could be things like pesticides, dry cleaning fluids, cosmetic additives, that makes sense. All those things make sense. Termite poisons, flame retardants. This one struck me as odd until I realized that flame retardants are typically added to industrial and consumer products to meet flammability standards in things like furniture and fabric, electronics, and building products like insulation. It might also be toilet cleansers. Oh, perchlorate. Again, I thought that one was really strange. The dominant use of perchlorate is in oxidizers, with propellants for rockets and fireworks. So how is that ending up in breast milk? Well, it turns out that perchlorate is also used to control static electricity in food packaging. So if you think about opening that bag of cereal, typically there would be a static energy buildup inside there. And they spray the bag inside the bag so that your cereal doesn't do that. It doesn't get charged to the side of the bag, doesn't cling there. And so that struck me as odd. And then BPA from plastic. Before BPA was banned, it was in all plastics, all those water bottles. I can remember cleaning out reusable water bottles out of my cupboard because they were not BPA free. The flip side of this is that, well, I should say this first, is that we're led to an obscene dilemma, that we have to make these choices sometimes, depending on your situation, depending on my situation. The idea, though, the overarching idea is that babies, that breast milk is the best food for babies. still. And so I just was researching this morning, is that there isn't enough to show that we should not be breastfeeding our babies. I breastfed all three of my boys, and I thought that it has been one of the highlights of being a mom. It is hard and is satisfying, and our bodies are freaking amazing. But you must make your own choice. I put another article linking about this in the week 8 module if this is something that you'd like to explore. Breast milk contains antibodies that help babies fight off all kinds of virus and bacteria. And the chemistry, the good chemistry of our breast milk changes to meet what the baby's needs are. And so there is an incredible system there. And God forbid if we ever had to move away from what is so natural. So again, Sandra's story is that she was diagnosed with cancer. She questioned, she studied, and she chose to act. She's educating others now about the things that she found, both in her teaching and in the books that she's writing. One more story. This is Theo Colburn. She was a farmer, a sheep farmer. She was particularly, obviously, interested in animals. She also had some history. She was also a pharmacist. And so she was interested at age 50 that what she was reading about all the chemicals and how they were affecting the animals, she went back and got her PhD in wildlife biology at age 58 and did research on emasculated river otters, male bass with ovaries, male gulls who had been feminized, shrunken gator penises. This is affecting the toxicity of our world is affecting the animals. And in this case, we are also animals. I'd like you to watch this quick news clip.
And finally this week, scientists and activists reported this past week that more than 80% of the male bass fish in Washington, D.C.'s major river are now exhibiting female traits, such as egg production, because of a toxic stew of pollutants. Intersex fish probably result from drugs, such as the contraceptive pill, and other chemicals being flushed into the water, and they've been found across the U.S. The Potomac Conservancy, which focuses on D.C.'s river, called for new research to determine what was causing male smallmouth bass to carry immature eggs in their testes. Vicki Blazer, a fish biologist with the U.S. Geological Survey, says early evidence pointed to a mix of chemicals commonly used at home, as well as those used in large-scale farming operations causing the deformities. The suspect chemicals mimic natural hormones and disrupt the endocrine system, with young fish being particularly susceptible. The chemicals could include birth control pills and other drugs, toiletries, especially those with fragrances, products such as tissues treated with antibacterial agents, or goods treated with flame retardants that find their way into wastewater. Blazer also pointed to runoff from fertilizers and pesticides from agricultural areas. About 5 million people live in the greater Washington area, and 90% of them get their drinking water from the Potomac. And there's evidence that the anomaly is not confined to the Potomac. A report last year by the U.S. Geological Survey found intersex fish in a third of 111 sites tested around the country.
So it's happening on a pretty broad scale. This whole idea that that the chemicals mimic hormones in the body. So the chemicals are mimicking either estrogen or testosterone, and it's causing this kind of dramatic shift. And if we look at our hormone system, hormones are produced in all these different places around our body. And when the chemicals are mimicking what's happening there, the chemicals in the system then get put into the receptors of our cells that are supposed to fit just hormones, but they end up being the same chemical shape. So like a key, they just go right in and fit in the same slot. And so this is happening not just in fish. Scientists are warning of a sperm count crisis in one of the world's largest studies, a study of 26,000 men. They found that the average sperm count had fallen by a third between 1989 and 2005. And so the idea that less and less sperm and potentially less and less healthy sperm is going to cause problems conceiving. And so it's happening in all sorts of cases. So in Theo Colburn's story, she asked questions, she felt, she became informed, and she acted. It's a pattern. So we call this class the giant experiment. A giant experiment. Why do we call it that? And how do you feel about it? I'd like you to take 4 minutes in your group to talk about this. So some folks are asking, talking in the chat about how do we fix this? What can we do to make a difference? Well, if we think about these were ordinary people, they're just people who've made choices to act. They've made choices to do something because they cared. Why makeup? Why do I have bladder cancer? Why is this happening to animals? They have been able to ask the questions, and that's so key. And then their common attribute is courage. They were able to say no. Say no. They refused to be silenced by their fear. They were able to stand up. Being silenced by fear is huge. What happens if we, fear can lead to so many things. I can be fearful of pain of feeling. That's huge. What happens if I open to this multitude of problems is that I'm going to feel like shit sometimes. But what does that do for me is that it makes me act. I choose to act. If I'm going to feel like shit, then I'm going to change it. I'm going to fear humiliation and shame if I am not, if other people have different views. I might feel like my voice isn't worthwhile, except that it is. You have just as much right to say what you care about as other people do. We're fear that if we speak, we're going to be judged as being odd, or, oh, you're just overly emotional, honey. There's nothing, you don't need to worry so much about that. No, speak up. It might sometimes be impractical, but we have to make our voices heard. We have to make our choices in a way that is aligned with what we believe and what we see. This whole idea that we can make choices and be creative and courageous. Where do you see possibility to be empowered? There are 500 of you listening to this right now, and you represent many majors across campus, many different life perspectives, many different countries and states. You have the power. We have the power in this group of people to make a difference. But I can't tell you how. Sometimes on the SRTEs at the end of the semester, there will be students that give BiSci a low mark and say, well, she didn't tell us what to do. I can't tell you what to do. Well, I could, but how would that play out? It's the inspiration for action is going to be different for each one of you. The mode of action might be different for each one of you too. And so in order to make this change, we each need to play our parts. We need to make those choices, and we need to use our own creativity, and we need to muster our own courage. And my role is to encourage all of you along your individual pathways. And I love my role, and I'm here for you. I want you to make the choices that fit for you, that help you be in your integrity. And so thank you for wanting to make change. It's really beautiful. So do it. Thanks so much for being with me today. I hope that you have an absolutely beautiful day. Enjoy tomorrow. Soak in opportunities. And I'll look forward to talking with you soon.